Yeah, my plan is right here on the side. I'm going to talk about just some foundational material that I think is important that you understand the underlying technology so that it helps you know what you're working with. And when things go wrong, you kind of know at what layer things are going wrong. And then I'll go into Claude Code, go through some use cases. So yeah, a lot of these slides I lifted from Andre Karpathy's like 3-hour tutorial.
And
So I kind of like just pulled out screenshots of what I thought was important. So this one talks about pre-training. So yeah, every large language model goes through this pre-training step. And what's happening is they're taking a ridiculous amount of data. Most of these companies, they're using Common Crawl. It's like snapshots of all web data stored. And they are filtering this data, cleaning it up, and trying to train models through this pre-training step. So yeah, whether you use Claude, ChatGPT, Grok, doesn't matter. Like they're all going through the same pre-training step. Then there's this tokenizing step. Let me just use this app here to talk about it. So text is not fed into the model directly. It goes through this tokenization step where you can think of a token as like a segment of a word. And these are mapped to a number, right? So for example, if I say Berean Community Church, okay? So this is 4 tokens, right? And like if I look at this token here, the third one, it's space capital community. And that's what the model sees, like 12,693. And through the training process, this number gets associated with this embedding, which is like a representation of what this word means, right? In a really high dimensional space, it also learns meaning relative to other words too. So it's a really complex process, right? So, I could just grab like, I don't know, like in the beginning, God created, right? So you can see like God, because it's a common word in the text, like pre-training text, space capital G O D is a token. But say I do like lowercase g, right? This is a different token. So, I mean, this is not like super critical, but just know that whenever you're prompting an agent or a model, it's actually being tokenized. And this used to be a bigger problem where like you could jailbreak these models because of this tokenization. Like, I know people would figure out different ways to extract private information from these models, but that's gotten more and more difficult. But yeah, this is tokenization. Then let's see, what's this? This is, so after tokenization is the neural network training process. So here the sentence is I viewing single. It's an interesting sentence. So yeah, like these tokens, you can see they're mapped to an ID. And these four tokens are passed through this massive neural network. And what the model is trying to do is predict the next token. Like not the next word, but the next token. And because you're feeding so much text through this model, the model eventually learns not just the next token, but it learns, rules of a language, or it learns semantic meaning of phrases. It learns a lot of high dimensional, like higher level concepts through this pre-training step. But yeah, this is also why there's randomness when it comes to like when you use ChatGPT. Like you send the same prompt in, you'll get a different output if you do it 5 times. It's because there's a probability, right? Where that every token that's coming in, there's like, say, a 2% chance or a 1% chance or 4% chance of each token. And it's like you're drawing from like this lotto machine, and depending on how the balls fall, different words are going to come out. And so that randomness makes these models interesting to chat with. But this is kind of like the underlying how it works under the hood. I'm going to skip this one. This one is pretty cool. So this site, it's called bbcroft.net LLM. This shows you, like, in gory detail, the transformer. So the transformer is like, how do I pause this? Okay. So yeah, the transformer is, you can think of it as like a model architecture that is used in every language model. And this is called nano-GBT. So there's only around 85,000 parameters. Like, these are, think of these as like knobs that you're turning to train the model. Like a modern day language model, like a ChatGPT, the underlying model is probably in the trillions of parameters now. Right, so this is like orders of magnitude smaller. But like, if you trace this, you can see, like, okay, what happens to these tokens, like how they're fed in. It's pretty fascinating. I'm not going to go through this, but it's pretty technical. But at the end of the day, like, what's being learned through these layers is like a bunch of meaning in the text, and then yeah, this model is eventually used in, agents like ChatGPT. So let me just show this one. In the inference step on this right side, you can see this is the data generation process where you're sampling one token at a time. So here, token 91 goes in, you get 860 back, and then you put 91 and 860 together, and you're getting the next token. And this keeps happening until you get what's called like a stopping token, and that's what stops the token generation process. Yeah. All right.
Question on that.
Yeah.
Would you say the stopping token is like someone got the answer they're looking for, or no, not necessarily?
I think that, yeah, it's a good question. I think it comes through a lot of post-training, where there's like a pre-training step and a post-training step where the model, the pre-trained model is not that useful. Like, it's not going to answer any of your questions. But in the post-training step, what's happening is you have like thousands or hundreds of thousands of, like, say, questions and answers that are being fed through the model. And that's when the model picks up like the ability to answer questions. And I think it's kind of like when the model determines that, okay, it's answered your question, that it'll output that stopping token. Yeah.
So how similar is this to ML? If you know ML,
Yeah.
I do, but how similar is this to ML?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's definitely relationships here. So I would say, if I type this out, there's like maybe artificial intelligence is like a high level. There's like machine learning. And then I would call this like generative AI. These are like subsets of AI. Machine learning, typically you have like supervised learning and like unsupervised learning.
Yeah.
Right? So like supervised learning is kind of like, oh, hey, I have labeled data, emails of spam and not spam. And you're basically trying to train a model that will classify emails as spam or not spam. That's like your typical supervised learning problem. Unsupervised learning is more like clustering. Like, okay, I have like customer data. I want to cluster, I don't know, my customer segments. So this is like unsupervised. There's no label per se, but you're just using unsupervised algorithms to group data together.
It's speed versus accuracy. Like the supervised is like longer to work on it, but the accuracy is so much better.
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily about that, but I think it's more about the label. Like, if you have a label or not. Like, that's
Yes.
what That's why it's called supervised versus unsupervised. Generative AI. So yeah, like for example, you can use neural networks as like a supervised learning algorithm. But what generative AI has brought is this pre-training step, right? Where you have, you know, thousands of terabytes of data like going into these models. So it's pretty absurd. Like I think each model run probably costs millions of dollars at this point to train these models. And what's fascinating is these models, right, that I've been training for like most of my career, they're task specific, right? Generally, they only work on one task. But this process, like post training, this process, the model that comes out of this is useful for thousands of tasks, which was like amazing when it came out, like 2023, 2024. I remember, being absolutely amazed that you had just like a chatbot that could do so many generic tasks without being trained specifically for that. So they called that like an emergent property that came from, you know, seeing thousands and thousands of terabytes of data, training it with thousands and thousands of examples. But this is like still at the stage of, we're still only around like 2023, 2024. Okay, so all of this developed, right, 2023, 2024. You had the early versions of like GPT, maybe GPT 3, 4. But yeah, so hopefully that answers your question. This is Karpathy's psychology of a base model. I thought was interesting. So he describes it as a token level internet document simulator, kind of like that. It's stochastic, probabilistic. You're going to get something else each time you run. It dreams internet documents. It can also recite some training documents verbatim. The parameters of the model are kind of like a lossy zip file of the internet. Yeah. So you can kind of think of like what's happening in this model training is you're compressing massive amounts of data into just a small file. And the file doesn't change. The file just happens to be very valuable. And yeah, you can use it for applications like as a translator app and assistant. And yeah, he recorded this at the beginning of 2025, right? So Claude Code hadn't come out yet. So that was like an additional step change that I will talk through. So yeah, I just described what has happened the last few years. So yeah, pre-2023, we had no language models. As a developer or a data scientist, I would like go to Stack Overflow, like to look up stuff, like how to do things. When LLMs came out, the first main product was GitHub Copilot. Like that in your IDE, it would be kind of like the ghost text. Like Gmail has it now where if you're typing an email, you can kind of see like the tab, like autocomplete. But the first app was in like your coding environment. It would autocomplete the next part of your code. That was really useful. I really like that. The first applications people built were what I call simple LLM chains, where you're just sending like one request to the agent and you're getting something back, right? So at my company, we would use this for like generating job descriptions, right? You send a job title, set of skills, and out would come a nice job description. But that's just one turn with the model. Next, you had coding IDEs. So this was a step from just your typical code completion. This was products like Cursor, Windsurf. This is where you finally had agents you could chat with your code, right? That would live on your sidebar. You could say, oh, hey, Cursor agent, like, tell me about this code. And it would kind of explore your code. You could like do tasks like, oh, hey, I just wrote this module. Can you write some tests for it? And that would work pretty well. Coding agents like Claude Code, which today's presentation is mostly about, came out in early 2025. And this was like a big change. And I think I can talk about like why. So this is just a diagram that shows what I did when I was first using like language models back in say 2024, and I would use an agent framework that was called like LangChain or LangGraph. Okay, so what I would do is I would define my agent, and the way you define this agent is you pick a model, right? Like GPT-4, GPT-5. I would define a tool, right? Maybe I have a tool that I want to fetch data, like Alex, your example. Say I have a Snowflake database. I want to fetch data from this database, right? I would write that as a function. I would bind that to my LLM, and that would be an agent, right? Like, so if I said, how are my sales doing, right? I would send this to the agent, and the agent would determine, do I have any tools that could help me answer this question? And the agent, the LLM, would call the tool, right? It would say, oh, hey, I have this fetch data tool. It requires these like parameters to call the function. It would generate those parameters, call the function, get the output from that function, and then process it, right? So that was really amazing. Like, that's still amazing today, like when I think about it. But you can kind of see here, there's like,
That's still step one, what you described.
no, I described step two too,
Okay.
where like
I was
just
gonna say, I was like, oh yeah, because they use
yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
So yeah, so step two is like me using it, right? Where I run it. Maybe the query is just a random question like, oh, how are you doing? Like it doesn't need a tool, so it's not going to go down the tool path. It's just going to answer my question like, oh, hey, I'm good. I'm a language model. How can I help you? But if I ask something like, oh, how are my sales? And my tool has like a description that says, oh, hey, you can use this tool to get sales data from Snowflake, right? Then the language model is going to know that, and it's going to be able to call that. And it doesn't do that all the time, right? So this is like where like the reasoning capability of models has come into play, where it is making decisions on whether to use a tool or not use a tool.
I'm sorry. Does it already have a list of tools available to it?
Yeah, so that's what
capabilities they have?
yeah, so that's what happens when you bind a tool.
Okay.
Like when you bind the tool, yeah, like different agent frameworks do this differently, but in LangGraph, LangChain, it's just the doc string of your function is like what the LLM, the model, will use to decide whether to use it. So if your doc string is random text, it's not going to know, right? But if you describe it well, then generally this works well. And you can still define agents like this, but I'm calling this like a V1 agent framework, where this was in 2024. A lot of agent frameworks came out, like LangGraph, like AutoGen. I don't know, like every company had an agent framework. Like that was the year of agent frameworks.
And you don't use those anymore.
So yeah, my company still has a lot of things that have been built using LangGraph. But yeah, like the problem is, like because things are moving so fast, it's difficult to like rip something out that you've already built so much stuff on. And so yeah, like it's not necessarily my job to make that decision for them, but yeah, if we were to do it again, we would not use this. Yeah. Yeah. So, and yeah, I'll talk about what I call V2 agent frameworks, which are coding agents. So just some things that have changed in that year, 2024, is the underlying models improved dramatically. So they have reasoning capabilities now, where in the beginning, you used to have to prompt the model to do like chain of thought, which is like, okay, my prompt here, like whatever it is, and then you would add think step by step. Right? This was literally what you would add at the end, and this would cause the model to spend more time thinking. And so this was like a technique that was pretty common at the time. But eventually this got built into the model itself, where now, like sort of, for example, if I go to ChatGPT, you can see like thinking is standard or extended. I could also turn this off, right? So if I say hi, so nothing is like, there's no thinking, but maybe I'll do a new one. Like, okay, so do some research about agent frameworks and how they've changed from 2024 to 2025 or 2026. Use search tools. Actually, I'm not going to say that. So yeah, so it's kind of using a tool. Also, it didn't really think, which I didn't. This example is not the best. So yeah, I'll manually turn on thinking. And so what's happening here is the models now, you can open it, you can show what it's thinking, which is pretty interesting. Like, and generally, like what's been shown is this thinking process, like it does help the model perform its tasks better. But this is in task specific, right? So it's getting complex, right? They even have an auto version where depending on what you're sending in, it'll decide how much to think. So yeah. So you can kind of see here, like you can kind of think of ChatGPT as like, I would call it maybe something in between V1, V2, like maybe 1.5, where it does have tools, right? It has a search tool, right? It's searching websites, and it has like a coding tool. It can write its own code. It can execute its own code, right? So it's a pretty powerful like agent in and of itself. It just happens to live in a browser. And it's still going, right? It's been going for over a minute. Yeah. So yeah.
Oh, that's a big difference between the thinking, not thinking.
Yeah. I usually have thinking on like by default, because in general, like if the question is relatively important, thinking is going to help you. Yeah.
Do you use it to help you improve your prompts too? Because you can kind of see the different topics and
Oh yeah,
to
for
narrow
sure.
it down easier.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. So, one thing that Claude Code, so I'm talking about Claude Code now, not LangGraph anymore, but what Claude Code added was generic tools. So I don't know if you guys know what Bash is.
Yes.
Right? So Bash is like the thing here, right? It's what live.
It's a terminal.
Yeah, it's like a terminal. Like you can do stuff here. But what's cool is there's literally thousands of programs that people have made over, I don't know, the last 50 years that live as command line applications, right? So like one common one is like FFmpeg, right? I use this to, like 2 years ago, I started transcribing Berean sermons, right? And I use this to, I use a different library to download the YouTube videos, but I use this to convert the video file and extract the audio. Right? So anything that you need to do with video or audio files, like FFmpeg is kind of like a Swiss Army knife of like a utility. But there's probably a utility like that for any use case, right? So, and because of that, Claude Code has a bash tool. That means it can run any utility, right? Which is amazingly powerful, right? Because I no longer have to hand write functions and tools, right? Because it has this single bash tool, it's like it has thousands of tools at its disposal. So
But you don't need to write FFmpeg.
yeah, you don't need to write FFmpeg.
Yeah.
Like FFmpeg has been in the training data. It knows that it's useful in these situations, and it'll probably use it, right? So going through my example again of the same query, like how are my sales? I have not, there's no hand-coded tools anymore, right? And so let's see what happens. So like Claude Code has a bunch of built-in tools, bash tool, you can read, edit, write files, you can use grep, like search files, and a bunch of other things. When I run my query through Claude Code, it can do a lot of things, but one thing that it may do is this flow where, okay, how are my sales? It goes through, calls the bash tool. It'll use like a BigQuery CLI, right? If my data is in BigQuery, it'll use that CLI to agentically explore BigQuery tables. So it'll write commands to like figure out, oh, hey, what tables or views are there? Once it finds the one it needs, it'll write the SQL to like fetch data from that. It'll execute that query, and then it'll take that output from that query and return it to your model, and the model then can answer your question. Right? So that, like, this is amazing. Like, I can't explain how general this is. Like, it is amazingly general because, yeah, like I said, there's thousands of CLIs, and even if it's a new CLI, like, and it's not even present in the training data, you can just have Claude read the documentation, and it'll learn how to use it, like, faster than any person.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think Tim gets it because yeah.
CLI is command line interface programs on the terminal. So you could, because I mostly write a ton of CLIs.
Yeah.
So, like, example, if we make our own Python script and make documentation for our Python script,
Yeah.
and then enter it in, it could then go, oh, given these, I now know how to use your tool that you've created.
Yeah.
And use it to do whatever.
Yeah.
You tell me to. Okay, that's
exactly. Cool. Yeah.
So the harness you're talking about is obviously you have the LLM, but the harness is the additional tools it has to retrieve, obtain data, to do whatever in addition to the LLM.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that yeah, there's two components here, right? There's the model and the harness. So the green part is the model, right? The green part in Claude Code's case, you have different versions of like Claude models, like Claude Sonnet, Claude Opus, Claude Haiku. So you could change that out. The harness is the tooling around it, right? This is literally the program you install. And like if I go to my Claude, right, and I start this up, this is a program, right, that's living on my computer. It's code. So this is part of the harness. Actually, for Claude Code, you can think of this as like just the harness. Like,
yes.
So, and yeah, this harness does a lot though, right? Like you can kind of see. So something I like to read from time to time is the Claude Code changelog. This changes a lot, right? Like they're on version 2.1.72. There's probably a new version on average like every 2 days, right? So they're changing this a lot because they're using Claude Code to develop this, right? Yeah. No, seriously, like their developers, like they don't write any code much anymore because you can't, the pace at which they're moving, like they're beyond that. And I think they're so close to the model that they obviously have an advantage. But yeah, like where they are, I think is where most developers will be maybe in like 6 months. Like how they're doing.
Secure, like there's so many dumb stuff you could do on the terminal. Like how do you secure that?
Yeah. So
do you need to set up your own container and have
yeah.
like to me, I instantly go like, hold on, put this on a container.
Yeah.
Limit its permissions heavily. Like,
yeah.
And like the container is like limited, and it lives in its. And then you're like, knock yourself out in here.
Yeah.
To me, that's like the first thing I think of.
Yeah. Yeah, I can talk about that. So Claude has its own permissioning system. If by default you run Claude to start it, you have to give it, you have to approve things. Like say it runs like the bash tool, right? And it wants to run this command, like, I don't know, movie, right?
Yeah.
If it's never run that command, it needs to ask you for permission.
Right.
So that's like one thing that is default. I've developed enough trust in it where I'll just run without any approval, right? I mean, I've been using this for like maybe 9 months, and I've never had it do something like that. Yeah, I've never had it delete files. I've never had it expose keys. Like they've trained the models so that it's not going to do that. And I would say if it does that, you've probably done something wrong.
I
Like,
would agree.
yeah, you've prompted it in a way that, yeah, like something has gone wrong. Claude generally lives locally. There are other coding agents like these, like Claude Code, that you can run things, in Docker or VM. But yeah.
How do you think about that in terms of your token use, though? If you start building something and you skip permissions and it just uses all these tokens to build something, and the end product is like, this is not what I wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where, yeah, something like, so, yeah, I'll talk about something specific to Claude Code, but in general, like my like guidance to you guys is this is like a new tool. Like it's a new way of working. And there's a couple things that you need to do. You have to not only learn the tool, but you also have to change the way you think. Like you kind of have to think about what you're doing and think about, how should I do this now that I have access to this agent? And so that's something I'm constantly doing. And it's difficult because you're constantly changing like what you're doing. So for example, like I'll just do this. So
Yes.
maybe I'll say like, actually I'm gonna go to a folder that I was gonna use as a demo. So
Ready to work.
actually I can briefly just show what I did and then I'll like build off of what I've built. So when I was at Shepherd's conference, which was really good, by the way, I encourage every brother to go at least once.
Oh, you can go as a non-pastor.
Yeah,
Oh,
you can.
Just as long as you're a man.
Yeah.
Well, I like that.
I describe it as a spiritual feast. It's really like, I feel very spiritually full. And you get to hang out with like a lot of brothers at the church. So, so one thing they mentioned at the conference that John MacArthur uses is the treasury of scripture knowledge. So it's like this thing that, okay, so if you look up a verse, let's go to like TSK, treasury of scripture knowledge. So this thing here, right, if I look up Genesis 1:1, it's basically a super extensive cross-referencing system, right? And so Pastor Peter actually likes this a lot too. And it's also by like phrases or topics too, right? So like it's not necessarily just about, like your study Bible or Bible typically would have 1 to 5 cross-references per verse, but this has, I don't know, like 40 for Genesis 1:1. And so there's like maybe on the order of 300,000 cross-references in this like repository. And so one idea I had was, okay, maybe I can build some interesting visualizations off of this data. And this guy who made Open Bible, he's made some of them, right? Like this is showing all the cross-references across the Bible, which is really cool. So I wanted to build something similar. And because of Claude Code, you can do this now, right? So I just downloaded this file, right? Download all the cross-reference data. And I just went into my Claude Code here. Let me see where I did it. Okay, so this is what I did. This is my prompt. I said, I've downloaded cross-references from Open Bible. Can you build a visualization of this data for me? This is really...
After what you put in up there.
Yeah, the CD is just me moving into this directory, like change directory. And then this is like me starting up Claude. And so this is the thing I sent in. And I'll just show you what it made. It made this. Right, this is like I don't know, like a radial diagram. So this is like Psalms, right? So I can see there's 14,000 verses that go from Psalms to Matthew, right? Like this is amazing. Like I would not, like we're at the point where this is something I would not have imagined even doing, right? Because this would take me I don't know, like 5 hours to do. And so I would not even consider starting something like this. But this is the type of thing that this tool like unlocks. Like whatever idea you have, you can just quickly try it, right? So I'm gonna do something now where if I go back to here, this is like the normal mode. If you hit Shift Tab, you can go to plan mode, right? So this is like answering Alex's question around how do you like steer the agent. You can plan with it. So say, okay, you've built a V1, that was nice.
You like compliments too?
Yeah, I would like, so
Beat up Claude.
I would
You're
like,
bad at your job. You do better.
This is dumb.
I don't know, I don't have a great idea right now, but I would like, to categorize the cross references somehow. And
I'll
so in
try.
plan mode, what it's going to do is it's not going to write anything, any code, but it's just going to build a plan that you review before it goes off and does something. And so you can see it's using this explore. This is an explore agent, I think. And it's kind of agentically exploring the files on my computer. So it's kind of seeing what's there. You can hit Control O to expand this to see what's happening.
Oh, so it built out a Python script to do that.
Yeah, it did.
Cool.
It did. Right. So you can see here, it's actually prompting itself, right? It's prompting itself with this prompt, right? So like this is not something I hand wrote, but it decided to write this prompt in order to accomplish my task.
And then you could either take that or you could pause and.
Yeah, it's still going. It's still going. It's going for a minute. What I expected it to happen is it's going to do the search and it's going to write this plan file. And then it's going to say, oh, hey, this is the plan I've written. Like, do you want me to like implement this plan? So generally, if there's a task that is pretty big, I'll do plan mode.
This is the tokens.
Yeah.
I got the $20 one.
Yeah.
because but how much tokens does it get you for $20?
Not much. It
Yeah.
depends on your project. Like
Yeah.
at my work, we have 300 tokens or 300 requests that we can use. Per month. I use about 2,000.
And that is.
And that's because it's a big project and the whole context is being passed.
But 300 costs how much?
I think like $30.
$30. Okay. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so there's tools that you can use to visualize your cost data. This is called Sniffly. And
find all this.
I just
Yeah, do you ask Claude? Hey, Claude, help me. Claude
yeah. I don't know. I think I read stuff, and I think what I read, I usually can tell if something is useful, at least for me, and I'll make a note of it. And I won't maybe try it then, but I'll put it somewhere where I'll remember to look at it. But this one is pretty cool. Like all of these messages are saved locally on your computer in your home directory in the .claude folder. And all this tool is doing is visualizing that data. And so you can go in and see like, oh, hey, this GitHub AI tutorial, right? It's cost $2. You can see like, these are the read tools it's used. These are the tools it's used: read, bash, write, ask user question, tool search, agent.
Does it charge you for do you use Bitbucket or GitHub?
GitHub.
Okay, so a pipeline, I think it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Than GitHub, and then there's runners. I'm not sure what
Yeah.
in GitHub.
Runners, yeah.
But you could have cloud-hosted runners, or you could have cloud-hosted runner. I'm going to call it a runner, but you could have self-hosted runners. They don't charge you for self-hosted runners. They charge you per minute for cloud-hosted, and is that the same thing with like when it runs your own bash stuff? Does it charge you tokens to run even on your own computer, or is it its own processing? It charges you tokens.
No. So as long as you're using it locally, the compute like the bash command is running on your machine,
Yeah.
right? So it's like a self runner.
Yeah.
So the only thing you're paying for is anytime a token is generated, right? It could be a thinking token that it uses or an output token that it uses, right? So you can see here, I have 114 input tokens and 66,000 output tokens. And so this makes up exactly $2.71 because of the model I'm using.
Okay.
So yeah, that's basically all it is. Right, so there to run the bash command, right? Maybe it generated 5 tokens like of the exact text that is running, right? Maybe the arguments for that bash CLI, right? It needs to generate that text.
Okay. So this agent. So what I've done is, so I automate a ton of stuff. So I've been doing this my entire career. I either write Python scripts, but now I've graduated to, I use Bitbucket runners like crazy. I'll put pipelines that will, what I'll do is I'll grab all the, like my last job, I don't need to do this. I wrote a Python script that scraped all the Jira data and shoved it into a YAML file. And then it processed that and then generated, because I needed test reports, and it generated, we use Jira as our sort of database for test cases. And so we generated all these reports were automatically done by Bitbucket runners.
Yeah.
And is this kind of like the same concept with this agent? It's just, you're just, instead of a Python script and running runners, you're doing the equivalent of that, right?
Yeah. It's way more general than that, right? Where I think what you're doing is you're creating Python scripts for a specific use case, right? And yeah, you're running that on some remote machine. What this is you have this system that has the ability to write code. And because it can write code, it can create any tool it needs on the fly.
So I get that, but you want it to, like, I want consistency though. And
Mhm.
since there's a bit of, it could be non-deterministic,
Yeah.
then a huge problem. I'm like, I would rather have, like instead of take this PDF file and scrape the table off of it and put it in a CSV file, I go, you did that once, actually, write me the Python script that scrapes this and gives me that, and then I'll run this for n number of documents and see where corner cases are. I would rather have that, right?
Yeah. So we'll get to that. So yeah, you can certainly do that now, right? So whatever automations you want to build, instead of handwriting it, have Claude Code write it for you. It'll go like 10x faster. So, but yeah, that's like maybe stage 1, and then we'll go through maybe. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a bit about Claude Code. I think I'll briefly talk about terminals. In general, like Claude Code, I think works best in a terminal. But there's different places you can run it. So you could run it like in the Claude desktop app. I think some of you guys told me you downloaded that. But I like it in the terminal. The terminal is nice in that, okay, well, here, this is the planning thing that we were doing. And it's asking me a question. So this happens a lot where if the agent determines it needs some clarifying information from you, it'll ask you a question. And so here it's asking me, okay, how would I like to categorize across references? I don't know. I think maybe thematic. So I'll let that work. And so generally this is like how I work actually. I'll have maybe 3 to 5 terminals that all like are doing different things. So this is like the power of this, right? You're not only using one agent, but you can use as many as you want, right? As many as like your mind can keep up with, and yeah, like as many as you can afford. But in a terminal, like you can't use a mouse though, so that's like the downside. I would encourage you to spend a little bit of time just learning it. You can just go to ChatGPT. I just asked this simple question. like, oh, hey, most common bash commands. And so it'll just teach you, right? So pwd, print working directory, ls is like list files. And it's helpful because, actually, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I'll talk through this a bit. So here, the docs are really helpful. The docs explain things really, really well. So, right, this thing talks about the agentic loop. When you give Claude a task, it goes through this loop of gathering context, taking action, verifying the results, and then you can interrupt it, right? And then it decides when it's done. Let's see. So these are some of the tools it has built in: file operations, search, execution, web, right? So it can search the web, it can fetch documentation. It also has, this is kind of new, it has code intelligence, which is basically like a language server, right? So depending on the language you use, Claude will, I don't know, use the LSP to see if there's any like static typing errors in your code, which is really cool. So let's see.
And that's more advanced than your IDE.
What do you want?
Well, if you're not running this in your IDE, then you won't have access to the LSP. But it's like, it can sort of self-verify the code, right, without asking you. Okay. Let me think through. So one thing that is important when you're working with Claude code is this file. It's called a CLAUDE.md. So what this does is anytime you send a message to Claude, right? Say I send a message like this. What's happening is not only is this message being sent, but there's something called like a system prompt that is being sent with it. The system prompt is like instructions that you want the agent to always to do. So those instructions could live in your project if it's like a project specific instruction, or it could be global if you have some instruction that you always want Claude to follow. And so that's what the CLAUDE.md is doing. And you would put this file at different, locations depending on what you want it to do. And so typically, like in the past, you could like actually generate this with a command like init/init. So it'll initialize a new CLAUDE.md with a code-based documentation. So, I mean, that's kind of cool, but actually, let me see. So maybe I'll try that. So what this will do, it'll try to create a new Claude.md file. I actually don't really like doing this anymore because I think the value of this is steering Claude where it goes wrong. So anytime you see Claude not doing something that you expect, that's the time you should type in a line in your CLAUDE.md to correct it, right? So say, I don't know, like it forgets to like add the styling for your presentations. Like maybe that could be a command that you have it do.
Doing?
I find that these generated ones, they don't really give you that much information. So, yeah, no worries.
So, can you show? Is that what the CLAUDE.md looks like?
Yeah, it's just a markdown file. So yeah, I can open it.
How big is yours?
How big is mine?
Yeah. Okay.
No, this is just the one that I just literally generated right now.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't use Claude Code a lot for personal stuff right now, and I'm not using my work computer, so I'm not going to show like super interesting like Claude MDs off the top of my head.
Did you put in it like dependency injection, like so for coding, there's a different style. You could say use
Yeah.
dependency injection, or you could say like maybe use graph. Prefer to use this type of graphing library.
Yes. Yeah, those are exactly the things you would put in CLAUDE.md. Because if you don't have that, what it's going to do is use whatever is like the most prevalent in the training data for that model. So, and yeah, if you have specific libraries or technologies you want it to use, yeah, those are exactly the things you should put here. Let's go back here. Let me see.
Did you try when you see the desktop app? I have another desktop app. It's called Cowork.
So yeah, it's similar. So Claude Cowork. Do I have that? Yeah, Cowork. So Cowork, you can think of that as they put a nice UI on top of Claude Code. Yeah. So yeah, like it's a similar type of experience. So yeah, you could use it. I actually haven't used it that much.
But who would use it? Like I get the
I
understanding.
understand
No, but then tell me how you use it. How do you use it?
I treat it like a best friend, or like a really smart professor friend, where like
Okay.
I'm not afraid to ask dumb questions or compare two products, and I ask it very open ended. So I'm not considering any of the things that you were walking through with like how my words are being converted into numbers and stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. I treat it very conversationally. It's
Yeah.
a dumbed down version for non-tech, less techy. So yeah, so this makes me wonder like, do I need to really change how I'm treating this?
It's not just code though, because you can be like, here's this folder, organize all these files and categorize them into new directories for me. So it's not like a coder necessarily. You can generate docs, do research, whatever. You can set up like scheduled tasks, but you can literally have it do
On
something.
this interface?
Yeah, so it's basically like OpenClaw a little, similar, where you can tell it to do stuff.
But you use this too, Cowork?
I use OpenClaw, but it's similar. You tell it to do stuff.
All right, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. So it's the same idea as Claude Code, but I would say the interface is just nicer, right?
Is this what killed the software
Yeah,
stocks?
it did. Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a second. Like a smart lawyer could say, here are my docs. Go make templates out of this,
Yeah.
or something like that, using Cowork.
Yeah, so I'll talk about that now. So I'm going to talk about skills and plugins, and yeah, that SaaS kind of like freak out. So okay, what are skills? Skills are you can think of them as, okay, I'm just going to read this. Create, manage, share skills to extend Claude's capabilities in Claude Code. Includes custom commands and bundled skills. Okay, so anytime you want, it's basically a prompt, right? It's a prompt in a special file called a skill.md, and it's really powerful. So
It's like very specific instructions.
yeah, so I'll like give you an example of this. So there's a skill to create skills. It's called the skill creator, right? So let's just read this, right? This file is pretty long. It's maybe a few thousand lines of instructions. And if you use this, it will help you create a skill, right? The literal text of a skill, but it'll also help you evaluate what's been created, right? It'll generate data. It'll feed that data through your skill, and then you can give it feedback, and then it'll iterate and improve upon the skill, right? So all of that logic is built into this, right? And your skill doesn't have to just be plain text, right? You can have it run scripts, right? So there's a bunch of scripts in here that the skill knows how to use, and it'll deterministically run that code. So it's really powerful. So for example, at work, anytime there's like a standard workflow now of like, say, oh, create this project or setting up something. Like it used to just live in like some wiki documentation and someone would have to follow these steps. But you can just quickly convert that into a skill. And now users can, or anyone that's using the skill can just run that and it'll happen. Right. So there's no longer, it's just such a better like user experience. And there's like a whole ecosystem of skills now, right? So so this thing is a thing that came out with Claude Cowork. It's an open source repository of plugins. So plugins is just a collection of skills. So if I look at the data one, right, there's a bunch of skills here, right? Data visualization, data validation, data exploration, data context extractor. Like these are all things that, right, a data analyst would do. And all of that knowledge and expertise, someone has written into a skill. There's another one I've used before. It's called the Compound Engineering plugin. If you never use GitHub, like GitHub is just the place that people put code, and like stars is kind of like the popularity of it, right? If you're in the thousands of stars, it's a pretty popular thing. This thing is 10,000 stars. This thing has somewhat automated like software engineering tasks, right? Where you just have these 4 commands: plan, work, review, compound. But there's a lot of complexity underneath here, right? Where when you run plan, it's more complicated than Claude Code's plan. It'll like do a bunch of stuff. And then work, it'll try to execute those plans with work trees, which is like another way of parallelizing the work. Task tracking, and then review. It will spin up like multiple agents to do like security review, I don't know, like architecture review, like 5 different things. So it's pretty crazy, like what is encoded in this plugin.
And that's in your CLAUDE.md file.
This is different. So the way you install this is you run this command, you add the plugin, and then you can you add the marketplace. And then a marketplace can have multiple plugins. You can install the plugin. So once you have the plugin, you can, so I'll just run an example here. So, so let me see. So I'm gonna like load this plugin I've been working on. Right. So once I load this, I have not the built-in ones, right? Init is a built-in one. But this orchestrate E2E is something that I've made, right? It's like, yeah, something that you can just directly run now. So it's really powerful. Like, so for example, this Agentic ML thing, I'm basically trying to create this thing, compound engineering, but for machine learning, right? Taking all of the things that I would do when I would train a model and putting it as commands, right? So for example, like some of these commands are, okay, like what I would normally do, like review this target or build a baseline model or checking dataset quality. Like, so these are all things that are now encoded in really clear instructions that Claude Code or Cowork could just use. And then you can chain these together, right? So this command, orchestrate E2E, will just run all of these commands in succession, right? So you can kind of imagine like for whatever like job, right? It's typically like a series of steps like this, right? Where you're doing something, you're reviewing the output, and you're doing the next thing. And I think this is where, like if you don't know how to use AI, someone is gonna do this, and their like productivity will like 10x.
So I'll write my like for instance, my boss asked me to like grab the, you want to change the SKU data on all these products
Yeah.
on Shopify. So I updated my Python script. It took very little time to do it, but then I go and then run my script on my command line, and then I took a previous version that was the output, and I ran it. I popped up beyond compare, and I compared the two files, like before and after, and then I diffed it to go like, because I have to. Did I really make the change or not? So it does need human verification, and then I go, okay, that looked good, and then maybe I do a couple other things. Is that something that could be automated in there, where it pops up all those things?
Yeah. So I mean, there's
Like stuff.
yeah, different things that you can automate. I would say the more you automate with your agents, you do need to think about like how do you verify the work that they're doing. And so there's different projects that are coming up where, okay, like the agents are going to produce these artifacts or documents that prove like what it's done. In like a typical software engineering setting, you have tests, so it's a little bit easier to do that. But for say like machine learning, I don't really have tests that I can run. So for example, like what I would typically do is, let me see, like what a good example is.
I mean, was my example wrong? It still needs to be a bit manual, or?
No, I think that could be automated. Yeah. I think the key is going to be how can the agent also like verify itself. So like, for example, here I have a thing called babysit training. What this is doing is if I have like a machine learning pipeline, what typically happens is it'll output some logs about like, oh, the model is training for 5 minutes. This is the error. It'll do that like every few minutes. What this agent skill is going to do is it'll monitor that, right? And it can determine if, say, something is going wrong, maybe the loss is not decreasing, it can stop the job and like make a change and start the new job, right? So it's not just like simple things, right? It can be really complex things. So yeah, I think what I'm trying to communicate through today is like you have these tools now, and what's possible with them is now you're only limited by I think what you can imagine, right? Like because it's so easy to quickly create new applications or new use cases, and yeah, even like build tools for yourself that make it faster. So yeah, like that's I think like my main like encouragement. I think I'll briefly talk about this article. So this article came out like about a month ago. It's called Harness Engineering, and so this is OpenAI. Their Claude code is called Codex. I actually do use Codex a bit, where I'll have Codex review the code that Claude Code has written. And it's actually caught issues. Like in this big project I'm working on, it's caught maybe 3 things that Claude Code didn't catch and that I wouldn't have caught, which was awesome.
It was valid.
Yeah. Yeah, it was valid. Because the model is different, the harness is different, right? So it's kind of like a different set of eyes on your code. But here, this is what they're doing. Their team has been running an experiment building and shipping an internal beta software product with 0 lines of manually written code. So, like, and if you go through this article, they talk about, so the term harness engineering refers to you're kind of like building and organizing things around the agent so that the agent is optimized, right? And so that's something that you also have to think about a lot, where okay, if the like how do we create this project in a way that is friendly to AI agents. So like, one example of that is like documentation, right? Like your documentation for a project could be in all these different places, and Claude Code or Codex may not know where it is, but if say it's local to your repository, maybe in the same repo, like that's good. Or maybe in your CLAUDE.md, you're referencing like where to find the documentation so it can like discover it. But like, yeah, this article is pretty amazing. Let me see. So yeah, this is like how they structured their Agents.md. It's like the general version of CLAUDE.md, where they have all these different docs. Let's see.
So for Claude, since we installed it locally,
Mhm.
and then we give it access to a folder,
Mhm.
I mean, the information comes in. I mean, we upload it, but it looks online for all these tools and stuff.
Mhm.
But does our information go all the way out though?
Yeah, so whatever data, yeah, so if I go back to this UVX Sniffly thing, do I have that still? No, I don't. If I go back to this and I look at here, so yeah, like if I go here, input tokens, 9,300, whatever text was in this input, yeah, was sent to their servers.
How about files? Same.
Yeah, so
Analyze this set of data.
yeah, typically files are not directly sent to the model service. I mean, sometimes they can accept like a PDF or an image, but typically like the agent will like extract the text from your PDF or something. Yeah.
So what about like
Extracted
security?
data gets passed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, if your data is going there, you can't necessarily trust them to like not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say,
That's why I've been so reticent, because I'm like, oh, they're putting it up there on the cloud.
yeah.
They're reading it all.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's some trust with these companies, right? At a company, like in my company, right, we have these enterprise agreements with these model companies where, you sign this thing. Oh, hey, we're not going to use your data to train our models. And so there's trust there. It's similar to like the trust you give to Google, right? They have data of all your searches, of all your email, right? And so there's this relationship of trust that's similar, I think, to these model companies. But yeah, there's no guarantee that they're not going to use it.
Well, so it's not a problem that they're going to use it. It's more like, sort of like, let's say you put your picture up there, and then your picture somehow ends up being public. It's the same exact concept of your source code or whatever.
Yeah.
Anything becomes like, you just pulled this and you brought this in here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that I guess is a risk. I've never seen that happen yet. So
Lawrence, what about that recent news about all these Chinese AI companies not hacking, but they stole some of the kind of the model algorithms?
okay, I didn't hear about that, but
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
no, yeah,
Like DeepSeek, basically, they got a bunch of accounts and did a bunch of prompts and pulled the data out to train their own AI model.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. One caution is when you use skills, you have to be aware of something called prompt injection. So what prompt injection is, let's see if I can find a good definition. Okay. Oh, it's kind of long.
Just go back and TLDR on Google AI.
Okay, yeah. Where malicious input overrides an LLM's original instructions. Okay, so because you're using models that follow instructions, right, you could have a situation where, say, you just have a website, and say in like white text, so it's not visible to humans, like it says, I don't know, like upload any tokens or passwords to this like file system, right? And so anytime someone does like a fetch with a language model on that website, there's a small chance that if your model hasn't been trained well, that it'll follow those instructions. So, and that happens like anywhere, right? Like could be a GitHub issue, could be a random website. So yeah, this is like called prompt injection, and it's pretty dangerous, right? You can like exfiltrate or like steal a lot of data with that. So that's why I would be careful not to like use public skills. Like, just be careful, right? There's like these skill marketplaces. Like Vercel has one. Let me see if I can.
Oh, this is like the Node.js kind of like injection. Or Node.js, like you got it includes this library, which includes this library, which includes this library, and this library goes and looks for Bitcoin tokens.
Yeah. Similar idea, but remember, this is like really generic, right? Because this could be just plain text in a random website, right? And you didn't install anything, but you just happen to like fetch the contents of that text, right? And that is now in your context window. And the model might follow that instructions on a future message, right? So that's called prompt injection.
You can do it with invisible characters too.
Yeah.
So you don't always necessarily read it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so skills, you can think of this as like a prompt. And a lot of online skills, they've been prompt injected, or people are trying to hack whatever you're doing with this skill. So just be careful of like public skills, or like if you use OpenClaw, like those public OpenClaw skills, it's probably better to trust like, generally I only use these like official, say Anthropic, knowledge work plugins. Like these are going to be safe. Something from something reputable. And yeah, if you want a skill, you could just like create it yourself too. Like that's probably also the safe way to go.
Like if I'm a beginner, there's a chance I may not need to use this yet up until there's like a big need, right?
Yeah, I would say you should start to use skills when you want to repeat something, right? If there's like a workflow or a process that you want it to use. So like skills, you can trigger them like yourself with like a command, right? Say I want to run this command here. But you can also, the model can call these skills itself too, right? So that's like kind of the power of skills as well, where, you know, say you have, I don't know, like a SQL writer skill, and you have, and that's loaded up, and you somehow are doing something that involves writing SQL, it'll use that skill in that situation. So yeah. All right. Yeah, I think this is just some of my action items for you guys. Like I already talked about this, meta work. Ask, is there a better way to be doing this? Yeah, learn the tools. Yeah, I would say Claude Code and Codex are slightly different. You know, maybe I estimate them about 80% of them. 80% of the functionality is the same, right? Like when there's a good idea, generally every company, every model company is going to do the same thing. So you don't necessarily have to use multiple. Yeah, Agents.md, CLAUDE.md, this is the same thing. Have your agent use CLIs, create CLIs. I didn't really talk about MCPs, but that was like something that was popular maybe a year ago, where it's similar to skills and tools that you give your agent these tools that it can use. So yeah, Some people still use MCPs. You can if you want, but I think using a CLI is better. It's just less tokens. It's going to be more accurate. Some other things just to keep in mind when you're using Claude Code is like Claude Code can teach you about itself, right? If you have any questions about how it works, you can ask it directly, right? And it'll search its own documentation. It'll answer your question. So it's like unlike any tool that you've probably used. And also it can configure itself, right? So if you want to customize it, you can have it customize itself, right? So for example, configure a status line that shows total token cost for the session. Like you could just have it do that. And it's like pretty complex. Like it'll write this shell script to do something and it'll like figure out where to place it, right? And it'll automate all of that. So be constantly learning. Like this space is moving so fast. I think this is probably one of the most important skills to have at this point. And I think this one is important too, where I've been in situations where the agent outpaced my understanding, where the agent started doing things that, like, there's too much code, too much context, and I couldn't understand what was happening, and I couldn't validate what was happening. And so, yeah, I think be careful about that. I would say another one is still think for yourself. Like, I think just like using a calculator will make you worse at math, I think using AI and overusing it will actually, it's even worse actually, because you won't be able to think critically, which I think is just so important to keep that for yourself. So yeah. Cool. I think that's all I wanted to go through. I mean, if you guys have questions, I can answer any. If you want to try to do something in Claude Code right now, you can also try to do that, and I can answer any questions about what you're doing too. But yeah, otherwise, that's all I have.
So I could run Claude Code CD to my code base and say, look for, please come up with some unit tests on whatever, or come look for bugs that I have, or ask generic questions about my code.
Yeah. That's a really good use case. Just a new repo, new code base. You could have it explain the code to you. You could have it draw architecture diagrams. Have it do anything.
A really cool thing we do is I work with our company is like 100 different technology teams.
Oh, it's pretty big.
We're like 12,000 people.
Okay, pretty big, yeah.
So a lot of times our platform has to integrate with other apps, and then if their team's not building a feature for us and we're building it, I don't have time to learn all the APIs and doing it the right way. Yep. They don't always follow their own API contracts anyways. I just load a workspace with multiple repos, multiple code bases, and then I said, go look through their stuff so I can implement this, and then I'll give it the spec of what I need to do, and then it handles everything. I don't even need to know anything about the thing.
So you have permission to use that at your company?
We have GitHub Copilot, and I just use OpenCode logging into my GitHub Copilot.
Got it. Okay.
OpenCode is just an open source agent harness.
It's basically this, but you can use other LLM providers.
It seems like this is the farthest along I've seen this, and it still seems like this is a tool only meant for smart people so far.
Yeah, so that's where.
I'm not insulting. I'm not insulting.
Now you tell me.
But in this, I go, okay. Let's say you want to automate some finance stuff, some lawyer stuff, or medical stuff.
Yeah.
It's not like a dummy could go, oh, let me go do it. No, someone who's like, okay, I need to break down the problem like this, and then I need to go through I don't see any smart people losing their jobs. I mean, translators, people who translate to different languages, like Spanish to English or whatever, those people are losing their jobs. But outside of that,
well, think about like paralegals. They collect all the data across many cases,
Yep.
AI does that instantly. So, and they're smart people too.
Right, but there's not enough paralegals.
But the thing is, AI is going to be able to do it and master every single case, not just have a cursory overview, and be able to tell you everything that the paralegal needs to know, but at a much deeper level.
One would hope that the tools like that good enough. Like in a lot of things, I'll do it like to 90%. I'm like, you save me a ton of time, get me to 90%. I'll just do the 10% there, which happens to be a decent amount of work too. But like, what do you think? Like, what? Like,
Yeah.
Like what I don't see smart people really losing their jobs yet from this, right?
Yeah. I don't think it's useful.
Next year.
I feel like it's not useful to predict which jobs will be lost. Like no one knows that, right? Like there's too many like first order, second order effects
I agree.
of like this. And so what I'm just telling you guys is like in the near future, as soon as companies realize that they don't need as many people, right, to do the same amount of work, they will just keep the people that are leveraging AI the most.
Until hold on for a second. That's true, and then all the companies have AI. So the companies that didn't really do AI, and the companies that did do AI, that wipes out those. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Then now everyone's got AI. Yeah, now what? What's the differentiator? Like, oh, you can hire smarter people. You can pay for better AI. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. So I think
that transition period, you're like, okay, yeah, I get that. Now everyone's equal. Now what?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bar for products is going to be raised, where like because it's so easy to vibe code or vibe engineer any app, you're going to have so many different iterations of this, but there's people that understand, I don't know, they're users, they understand like design, and whatever they build is going to be way better. And yeah, those companies I think will just accumulate more customers. But yeah, this is like ridiculously hard to predict. I think I was thinking about this analogy. It's kind of like the printing press when that was invented, right? You had so many second order effects, right? You had the cost of making books like go down by 99.9%. And the skills that became important were now reading and writing. Here, I actually think that AI will be more disruptive than the printing press because what you're essentially automating is intelligence and you're scaling that up massively. But who knows like what that will do, right? Like what that does to society, what that does to the economy. Like, I don't know.
Lawrence, how would you differentiate yourself in your job when some college grad who's savvy with block code could just type in English language and build me this, build me that?
Yeah, so I think that's where like having understanding of these things is important. I mean, so yeah, in my like job right now, like I have me and like 4 people, right? So like I'm like, 15, 20 years out of college. Someone else is 10 years out of college. Another guy is 10 years out of college. The other people are there's 2 junior people, 2 years out of college. And so, yeah, we all have access to the same tools, right? But depending on like your level of experience, your level of skill using these tools, like your output will be wildly different. So, and yeah, I think companies will eventually figure out not just like measuring who's using AI, but like who's using it effectively. And so, yeah, there's a lot of companies that are trying to do that now.
Position too, so I think
do nearly as well. Everest is probably playing multiple job roles now, and that's being done because of AI, right? Like I don't think you need software engineer, architect,
product manager,
QA tester, product manager. One capable person can do it all now, like all 4 jobs. But the problem is, as a company, companies are not set up to do that,
No,
right?
they're not.
And so that's why companies probably will need to make difficult decisions in order to take advantage of this. Like the company has to be like refactored and reorganized.
Right, I forget. I think it's called Connor's law, or I forget. There's a law where it says the software architecture matches the team structure.
Yeah.
I forget. It's something like Connor's law. But here's an example. I was the dev manager, and I was forced to take on system tests, and I said, "Well, I'm going to automate this and like get rid of the QA guys." And my boss above me said, "Sounds fine," and I did it. And so my devs, before AI became, they wrote code and they wrote system test code in Python. And then AI is roughly the same thing now, right? Like guys are gonna write kind of it all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, our platform is all in Swift, but none of the other teams know Swift. So when they come in, they're just operating an AI agent to write software to contribute to the platform. Because they're all coming from, whether it's TypeScript or Python, whatever it is, they don't need to know. They don't have to have domain knowledge of our tech stack.
Before we get too much further, can we just thank Lawrence for putting this together?
Yeah.
You're
Part
welcome.
one, right? Part one.